welcome back to another episode of 10 in the Head. I'm ecstatic today because we got Nick Squared coming at you. We're doing an all toss-up, veteran-only, 30-plus of age episode of 10 in the Head with a good friend of mine, Nicholas Volinchak. Nicholas, good to have you on.
So, did you do this on purpose because I told you I was 33 years old? Did you specifically make it over 30 as like a slant towards me? You're trying to come at me here,
A little
being the young buck?
a little troll session. I thought about that when I'm thinking, all right, of all the people I could ask to do a 30-plus veterans episode, who is least or who's most likely to have seen them in their prime? Oh, I know. Nicholas Volinchak for sure. No, I did not do that on purpose, but that is hilarious that you bring it up, my man. Nicholas, good to have you on. Founder of ResearchFantasy.com. People are out here trying to look up who you are while this episode's going. Where could they find you at, bud?
Well, they could find me at ResearchFantasy.com. Most specifically, outside of that, I spend a lot of time on YouTube doing stuff there. I just started the Fantasy Now podcast, which is a daily fantasy industry talk. It's not really, it's so hard to say it because when you try to say words that it's a daily fantasy, it's not a strictly DFS podcast. It's literally a daily fantasy industry covering all topics, all the types of things going on in the industry, something I'm really excited about right now. Other than that, you can catch me on Twitter, either at my personal handle, Nick from CWE, or at Research and Win for the company.
I love it. So there you go. If you need to follow or see who he is, make sure you go and check it out. But I'm sure you already know, as we're going to dive in here to 10 topics. 8 toss-ups, I believe, we're doing today. Again, like I said, all veterans. So let's get into it. Question number 1, toss-up. And we're doing our only tight end question here. Jason Witten, Antonio Gates, Ben Watson, Zach Miller. A fatal 4-way to the death. See who brings out the best person for you to draft in your fantasy football league this year if you're waiting real late to get a tight end or if you're trying to get a backup. In my opinion, it's Jason Witten. Now, Jason Witten and Antonio Gates finished 11 and 12 last year. Tight end one for both of them, excuse me. You can't forget about Ben Watson. The last time Watson was healthy all year, he finished number 7 with 800 plus yards and 6 touchdowns in New Orleans. And we know Flacco loves to hit his tight ends. Now, Watson was injured last year, but I could see a resurgence from the veteran tight end. But Jason Witten may have only had 3 touchdowns, but in a PPR, he still finishes as a tight end 1, in my opinion, this year. And I don't see Dak performing better than he did last year. I do see him regressing, but that might even just help Witten. It might give him more of a security blanket than he needs. I do like Zach Miller. He's athletic. Poor quarterbacks in Chicago might help him catch a little bit more than when Cutler was out there just throwing up god-awful passes to the receivers. So that might help Miller. But in the long run, Jason Witten is who I'd be drafting at this point. Nicholas, who you got?
Well, Zach Miller might not make the team. Ben Watson is coming off of, I believe it was an Achilles injury last year. Antonio Gates was graduating college when I was graduating high school, and if I'm old, I don't know what that makes him. Plus, he's got the most capable backup of the bunch. It's not even really fair to say that. With all due respect to Antonio Gates, the reality is that Hunter Henry is the tight end, and that I personally do believe that this year is just going to be a nod to Antonio Gates. Let him get he's going for, I think, just a touchdown record for tight ends. Is that what is happening?
That's all they want him for. That's all he needs to be in the NFL for.
So you can shovel all the crap you want at me about how, Hunter Henry is going to be the guy, up to the 20-yard line, and then after that it's going to be Antonio Gates. Explain Hunter Henry's 8 touchdown catches last year if that's the mentality. So I'm not buying it. Witten literally has nobody in front of him, nobody behind him. I am not down on the Dallas passing game this year. I'm not sold on the Dallas defense, and I think that dictates that the Cowboys are going to have to pass. I'm not saying that it's going to – I see the Dallas Cowboys passing offense as being a pretty good spread around offense. I think you could see 2 or 3, maybe even 4 guys fantasy relevant on this Dallas Cowboys team, Witten being one of them. He's nothing like to get excited about, but he's going to give you, I think, some security out of the four.
Yep, so agreed. Jason Witten seems to be the first toss-up answer. Question number 2. Toss-up again. Pierre Garçon versus Eric Decker. And in my opinion, it's such a simple answer. Pierre Garçon all day. Garçon had his career year with Kyle Shanahan as an offensive coordinator in Washington. Now Garçon goes from Washington to San Francisco to be the main guy. Targets are going to be in plentiful for him. It's going to be unbelievable if Hoyer can stay the quarterback that he was with Chicago. 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. 4 games started and ended with 300 plus yards. I love Hoyer and I love Garçon, and this matchup could be great. Now I understand that Shanahan's first year at new teams, their offense is never unbelievable. And I'm not calling for San Francisco's offense to be great, but I'm calling for Garçon to get, maybe it be garbage time points or whatever it may be, to just get him so far above where he's being drafted right now. I'm loving Pierre Garçon. Decker's got a lot of people there that can take targets away from him. He'll get his red zone targets, but even then, I like Rashard Matthews as a red zone threat for the Titans. So that just kind of dips into Decker's stats right there. So for me, give me Garçon, and that's what I'm going to have to say on Garçon. Nicholas, who you got?
I'm 50-50 on this one, and it's going to be completely dependent on the format. Like, Garçon just doesn't catch touchdowns, and he's played on enough teams at this point that I don't think it's just or he's played long enough that I don't think that it's a anomaly that he doesn't seem to get over 6 touchdowns a season. Decker regularly averages that, and that's now over 2 different football teams. Granted, there's no guarantee that it's going to be the same way in Tennessee. There are enough mouths to feed, but you've got like the most efficient touchdown scorer in the 10-yard line or in the red zone, but specifically the 10-yard line and forward, with both Mariota from the quarterback perspective, Decker from the wide receiver perspective. So I think what ends up happening here is you end up with a situation where Garçon might average, 6 more catches a game than Decker. Decker ends up averaging on, like, basically what I'm trying to say here is that the touchdowns and the receptions will offset. So if it's standard scoring, I'm going to take the touchdowns. I do think the yardage has pretty close chance of being the same, but in full PPR leagues, I think you could probably be better suited with Garçon, and I think you're going to get him a little later because people are scared of the 49ers.
Absolutely, they are. It's a tough offense, and a lot of people are shying away from him. Pierre Garçon, PPR, Decker, standard. Question number 3 here. Toss-up. Larry Fitzgerald, Emmanuel Sanders. Larry Fitzgerald, to me, is that surprising wide receiver that seems to always be around. Arizona's coming back with a vengeance this season, and their offense strives around Fitzgerald. Sure, Smoke Brown's going to be running up and down the sideline, and DJ's going to get his touches, his carries, and catches. But Fitz will get his targets. Don't even question it. He's going to get his targets if healthy. And Arizona is going to make Fitzgerald a PPR king. And with the yards that he has averaged, plus the touchdowns that I see Arizona getting in the red zone, Fitzgerald is in my mind, extremely more important to be on my fantasy team than Emmanuel Sanders, who is still sitting with Simeon and Lynch, whoever is going to be running that team. The running backs scare me, which it doesn't draw a lot of defenses in. They make sure to cover DT and Sanders. So give me Fitz over Sanders. Nick?
Yeah, I'm basically not even looking to Emmanuel Sanders or Demaryius Thomas for that matter unless I'm getting them at a steep discount. I just don't trust the quarterback play. On top of that, I don't trust the running back play, which makes the offense, kind of a quagmire of uncertainty, and I just would prefer to tend to stay away from that given you have the choice this early where you're taking Sanders. Fitz is going to be a PPR monster as long as, there's no injury. There's nothing that's changed here in Bruce Arians' mentality for how this season will be coached. He's still the top passing option, and he's not really as I think he's only 32 years old, so he's not as old as like Antonio Gates and Ben Watson and some of these guys that we've like honed in on and been like, well, they're really getting old here. Like Fitzgerald's not that old.
Right. Right, he's not, and he still performs. I mean, especially once he went to the slot, he had a little bit of a hard time, coping with it. But once he hit the slot, he hit it with guns ablazing. He's just been phenomenal. I love it. Looks like Larry Fitzgerald seems to be the combined answer there. Question number 4, though. We're moving into the running backs. We got the Tank Frank Gore. Frank the Tank Gore. I messed that up, but we'll move on from there. And AP, AD all day, Adrian Peterson. Frank Gore, Adrian Peterson. For me, this is a tough question. And it's easy to say Mr. Consistency, Frank Gore, should probably outperform running back 2 Adrian Peterson right now. But I'm not going to go that way. And I'm going to say Adrian Peterson. And the only reason, maybe not the only reason, but one of the biggest reasons is it's finally the year that Gore doesn't hit 900 yards. My gut is telling me that. I'm going with Marlon Mack late in drafts, maybe even Rob Turbin. I just am not buying on Frank Gore yet again. And it may come to haunt me as it has the past 5 or 6 years, but Peterson's gonna have to prove himself. He's on a new team where he's not the highlighted player. He's not even the starting running back on his team right now. And I don't know about you, but I think that's just gonna spark just get something going in Adrian Peterson where he's just gonna prove himself. And once he gets the first few games under his belt in New Orleans, I have a feeling that Ingram's going to be out the door, and we're going to be seeing the AP train for next year, and he's just going to dominate in 2017. So for me, AP over Frank Gore. Nick?
Yeah, I cannot fathom a situation where I would choose either one of these players. I just being honest, like it's Gore has been a top 17 back his entire career, but when you end up looking through the stats on the year, 2 games he ends up being an RB1. Ends up with these stat lines that are good but just not great. And if there's no upside to a player, I guess I can't really see the reason for taking them. Like, oh, he's Mr. Consistent. Well, 900 yards divided over 16 games, not really a lot, as it turns out. And especially with a guy who's being phased out of the passing game, he's being phased out of goal line touches. Like, please explain to me where the upside is there. But conversely, with Peterson, you have a situation where the game flow is negative to him. You have a horrible, like the worst defense in the NFL. Bottom worst defense, not a terrific pass catcher. That's an area that Ingram has actually been good at, not to mention they brought in Alvin Kamara and still have Travaris Cadet. So with Peterson, you're banking on the upside, but the upside for him would be the things he's not good at. So we're hoping that he can outperform Mark Ingram as a straight-up running back. Where he's being drafted, I get it. Like, this is Adrian Peterson. If Calvin Johnson was still in the league coming off of a couple of bad seasons in a row, like, we'd be talking about him in the same light. But if I'm choosing between the two, there's at least some upside I can see with Peterson, so I guess that would be my final answer.
AP. Quick little NFL news note, too. I just read a little bit ago that Cadet actually seems to be on the chopping block and may not be on the final 53-man roster. But there's just little news for you. It looks like AP is who we'll be going with if, gun to our head, we're picking between Frank Gore and AP. And we're going to run into question 5 here, sticking with our running backs. PPR, great question, toss-up. We talking Danny Woodhead, we're talking Matt Forte. And this is by far, in my opinion, the easiest answer out there, just for the simple fact of the Ken Dixon injury news that we just got. Another NFL news, if you haven't heard yet, Dixon is out for the year, meaning Danny Woodhead and Terrence West is about to run the Baltimore backfield. At that point, that's going to lift Woodhead over Forte in an absolute amount. I'll be taking Woodhead very early in comparison to where I had him, just because I had Woodhead down a little bit because I thought Dixon was going to be able to come in after 4 games and actually rival Woodhead in the PPR stat. Obviously, that's not going to happen anymore. Wes isn't the greatest pass catcher. Danny Woodhead, if healthy, is unbelievable. So talking PPR, Danny Woodhead, not going to mention Matt Forte. I mean, he's going to get some catches. Powell can catch the ball also. If McCown isn't going to be chucking him up to his receivers, so he could be trying to find his backs a little bit more. But again, I'm not buying Forte unless he drops super, super far. Give me Danny Woodhead. Nick?
Well, I think Forte is dropping pretty far, and I like that. Like, my theory on Forte is I'm going to draft him, cross my fingers that he's atop the depth chart like the first 2 and 3 weeks of the season. Hope he does what he did last year, where he goes out there and makes you go, where in the hell did Matt Forte come from? And trade him to an unsuspecting and soon to be regretful person in all of the fantasy leagues that I'm in, because there's no way that it lasts. I mean, his career has basically been a shining example of a guy who gets off to a great start and then the toll of football sets in almost immediately. Woodhead's pretty much a hands down choice here. There's very little question, especially in full point PPR leagues, that his stock will be jumping. In best ball leagues, I'm sure that he's going to be a huge riser, because we know Flacco liked Pitta, we know Flacco liked Ray Rice. Neither of those guys are in this situation. I'm not trying to give you a direct parallel, but I'm just saying that he likes to throw to one guy a lot, and with Pitta no longer in that offense, and the glowing reviews we've gotten about Danny Woodhead, it wouldn't shock me to see him right up there this year in running back PPR scoring.
Agreed. Danny Woodhead all day. I like it. I mean, Woodhead's just going to get the opportunities in Baltimore, and when he's healthy, he is a catching machine. Unbelievable. Danny Woodhead. Let's move on, though. We're sticking running backs, and we're going for more of the hard-nosed hitters. Number 6, toss-up. Marshawn Lynch versus LeGarrette Blount. And in my opinion, this is probably the toughest question for me. And I say that because both of these running backs have the ability to be top 10 running backs easily, especially given the offensive line that both of them are running behind. That's just going to open up holes and holes. Really, the question is, who doesn't get hurt? And in my opinion, Marshawn Lynch is going to get hurt. It's very tough to miss a whole year from the NFL, basically 2 years from the NFL, as he didn't play a lot in 2015. He didn't play at all in 2016, and then come back and just be a beast like you were. It is beast mode that we're talking about, so I could see it happening, but I'm not going to take Lynch in any drafts. Give me LeGarrette Blount. I think the receivers added to Philadelphia is going to make Carson Wentz a better quarterback, open up the running lanes even more by spreading out the defenses. Torrey Smith is a burner. He can burn. Jordan Matthews still there. Obviously, Alshon Jeffrey is a beast when healthy. Obviously, he doesn't stay healthy all the time, but when he's there, he's healthy. Again, that's just going to open up the holes, I'm saying, for LeGarrette Blount. Give me LeGarrette Blount over Lynch on a gut feeling. What about you, Nick?
I mean, Lynch is going really high right now. It's a little bit annoying. I think he's somewhere around like the 10th running back going off the board versus Blount going like 30th. But Blount is a huge overreaction. Like, he had 2 good seasons, his first and last year. Really has not ever come close to what he has done last year. Yes, this Philly offensive line is good. I think the Philly offense will be good, but it's not going to be New England Patriots good. So the touchdown numbers coming down quite a bit. Crowded backfield. News came out, and I've said it plenty of times. I don't care for coach speak because it's typically lies. But, we've heard reports that they want to carve out a better role for Wendell Smallwood. He's a talented back. It wouldn't be shocking to see him get involved in the game there. We know that Darren Sproles is going to have a role. I think that, all things considered, there's, yes, DeAndre Washington and Jalen Richard are in Oakland. I don't want to get into the game of predicting injuries because that's really tough and you're going to find yourself burnt more often than not, I think. It, I think, like, my original response to this was, well, just take Lynch. I think that Lynch has a better season, but 20 draft positions apart, or 20 at the position apart, is just really, really tough to swallow right now. I just don't know that there will be that much of a gap between those two. So I guess for the value you can get on Blunt at this point, that's probably the route to go.
LeGarrette Blunt for his value. Lynch is just creeping up. Everyone's getting on the Lynch train, and respectively so. He's a beast. Let's see how he does this year. And we're going to jump in to our quarterbacks. Final two toss-ups. We got some mid to late round quarterbacks. And this question, next question, the top boys. But let's go to question number 7. Toss-up, three-way, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, Eli Manning. In my opinion, it is not even questionable. Phillip Rivers will be a top 6, top 5. I think I have him 6th on my rankings right now. He's going to be a top 5, top 6 quarterback. Even with Mike Williams going down, we don't know exactly what's going on with him, but that doesn't even scare me. He's got Henry. He's got Allen when healthy. He's got Tyrell Williams, who just played out of his mind last year, who's entering his third year, which is just the year for the receiver to really blow up. He's got Melvin Gordon, who's a great pass-catching running back to get him a lot of lazy points. Roethlisberger's got his boys. He's got AB. He's got Bell. Bryant's back. They drafted Juju Smith-Schuster, but the simple fact is Roethlisberger's home and away is dreadful. There's 8 games of the year I'm not going to be starting Ben Roethlisberger. Eli Manning, I'm just not sold on their offensive line or their run game, which is just going to make it harder for Eli. You just can't toss to OBJ all the time. Marshall's there, and that's going to add a very nice combination of OBJ and Marshall, but I'm just not buying Eli. I never do. I just hate Eli. He's always on my don't draft list every single year. Sometimes it burns me, sometimes it doesn't. This year I don't think it will. Give me Phillip Rivers if I'm choosing between these 3 quarterbacks, and I'll take Rivers as maybe my only quarterback on my team. Hot take. Nick, who you got?
Well, I think to start things off, it's pretty easy to eliminate Eli Manning because he has the potential. And when you look at that team, the running back situation, like, you can't feel comfortable with Paul Perkins. I'm sorry. I was high on him coming out of UCLA. But you know, it's just been it feels like it's been far too long that there's been a relevant Giants running back that you can hang your hat on. It's similar to Denver. Like, you know, every year everybody gets excited about a running back from Denver, and by game 6, it's a 12-headed monster in the backfield. I can't do that. Ben by far has the best offense. Maybe it's not by far, but, you know, Phillip Rivers doesn't have Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, and Keenan Allen and Melvin Gordon, while good, are nowhere near close. Ben's road schedule: the Browns, the Bears, the Lions, the Colts. That's half his games are against some pass defenses that are pretty shuttered. I don't know. I think that it was like Drew Brees. You know, he's always been an extreme home away guy too until last year he wasn't. I'm not going to draft Ben based off of the fact that he is not good on the road. I do think that I don't want to take him where he's going. Rivers has been a constant 10 to 14 finisher. I'm good with that for where you're getting him. Don't care if he's my only quarterback. If he's going to give me, you know, if you finish 10 to 12, that's QB1.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I'm not complaining about the value I get on a guy late in the draft. It's pretty much a lock to give me QB1 value at the end of the year. So to me, this was the simplest question for me. Might have sounded like it was Woodhead versus Forte, but really I think it is Rivers over the other two pretty easily.
Rivers, number 6 quarterback last year in fantasy points. And Roethlisberger's playing Detroit at Ford Field. You definitely don't want to start him then. Just believe me, I promise you that. So question number 8. It's the big guns. It's the gunslingers. It's the top boys in the quarterback position. Excuse me, can't talk. Getting towards the end. Good thing. Toss up. Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees. These are three big guys that everyone wants to get on their fantasy team because of their name. Aaron Rodgers is the sold number one quarterback and has been for a couple years. He's just that good, but I'm not picking him. I'm not picking Drew Brees. They lost Cooks. They added Ted Ginn. Just Drew Brees is consistent, but I'm just a little scared about the inconsistency at his wide receiver position. Thomas is going into his second year. It's just a little scary. So give me Tom Brady. The guy that took Brandon Cooks over is going to make him a superstar as more than he was. He's got Gronk, who already is a renowned superstar. He's got Edelman still. Hogan just got listed as the number 3 receiver. Mitchell number 4. Amendola number 5. You got James White, Deion Lewis, Mike Gillislee, Rex Burkhead. They have a slew of weapons that is unheard of in the NFL. And Brady's going to hit each and every one of them so patiently, and as they all glide in for touchdowns, I see 50 to nothing game, not 50 to nothing, but 50 plus points for New England, damn near every time they step on the field because of their weapons. And Brady's just going to sit there and take all the fantasy realm of that. So give me Tom Brady to really just set himself apart from the other two by a couple touchdowns in the end of the year, in my opinion. So meet Tom Brady. Nick?
Yeah, these are my 1, 2, and 4 quarterbacks here, which might sound weird, and that could change depending on the status of Andrew Luck going into the season. Picking Aaron Rodgers in the draft is like playing Dustin Johnson in PGA DFS, which might not mean anything to anybody who's listening to this, but since I've been making golf lineups all night, you're going to hear me out. He's the best player at what he does, but you need Dustin Johnson to win the tournament to make him worth paying for. Conversely, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't finish as the number 1 quarterback, like by a lot, then he was pretty much a wasted draft pick. I get that you'll tell me you still won with him because you waiver wired this and traded that, and that's all fine and dandy. But at the end of the day, you could have picked someone else there at a different position and gotten another player at a better value at the quarterback position. And if you look through the Green Bay history, like what happened last year is not the constant. You know, a lot of issues with running backs. I know that things seem unknown this year. I do not expect opening weekend to come around and for there to be this level of confusion. For me, this pick easily is Drew Brees. He's being drafted lower than the other two. He has game script going in his favor. You know he's going to throw the ball. You'll deal with the interceptions. But at the end of the day, he's the guy that I want to have because you know what you're going to get out of him. If Mike Gillislee becomes what people think he can become, that is going to have some kind of an effect on Tom Brady. It might not be marginal. It's not going to push Tom Brady down to QB7. But Breeze, I really just don't see great game script working to the point where Ingram or Peterson pushes him down a couple of notches.
Drew Brees. Drew Brees is going for Volinchak. I'm taking Brady. I hope you're right about Gillislee. Obviously, I have been talking him up since day one on the Patriots, and I would much rather have Gillislee be way better than where he's being drafted than Tom Brady. But for the answer, I said Tom Brady. We got Drew Brees over there from the other Nick, and that was a good toss-up. Top 3 quarterbacks. Well, top 3-ish quarterbacks. Good one. So we're jumping into final question of the day. 10 in the heads, 10th question. And as always, our late round flyer. And it can be 100% someone that's already been mentioned in a question already. For me, it's someone who hasn't. And it's a quarterback. If you're not getting Rivers, you're not getting Brady, Breeze, anyone, you're waiting till the last pick in the draft. I already did this in an earlier mock draft that me and Nick had done for researchfantasy.com. And I waited until the last pick before my kicker and defense to get Carson Palmer, quarterback, Arizona Cardinals. Like I was saying, with Fitzgerald. The Cardinals are coming back with a vengeance this year. They look more like 2015, and Palmer, you could tell, was a little weakened by the injury and the health issues for Smoke Brown. Now that Smoke is looking like he was in 2015, he's dropped a few pounds, he's faster, he's leaner. It's just going to help Carson Palmer so much. Floyd is off the team, and I don't think he was ever anything that helped Arizona. I honestly feel J.J. Nelson is going to be way better of a receiver than Floyd ever was. So give me Carson Palmer, especially with DJ getting him his lazy points all day. I don't care where you need to draft him. You should be targeting Carson Palmer. That's my late round flyer for everyone listening. Nicholas, who you got?
Well, to defend you as well as if it's needed, Palmer was like turning the ship around by the end of the season. Like, it was awful to start out. Even though we did see Fitzgerald have some really nice games, it was not good. So I'm with you on Palmer. My take is a guy who we saw in 2015 in the absence of the team's stud receiver go out there and put up ridiculous value in drafts and had a huge season. Didn't do much last year because everything was broken for this team. Moves on to a new uniform, the New Orleans Saints. Their top receiver, Brandon Cooks, now out the door to New England. Ted Ginn comes into a very nice situation. You know Breeze is going to push the ball downfield. That's not really the calling card for either Michael Thomas or Willie Snead. So it's going to go to Ted Ginn, who showed last year that he still does have the Jets. He's not incredibly old either. He was an 07 draft pick, so this is year 11 for him coming up. I'm confident where he's been taken that he has nothing but upside, and especially in best ball leagues and daily fantasy formats, it points this year that he's going to be a guy you want to have some exposure to.
Ted Ginn. Late round flyer from Nicholas Volinchak, Carson Palmer. Late round flyer from Nick Faber. I love it. That's a good 10 in the head. So I appreciate everyone listening. It's been a very, very, very fun 10 in the head episode with my special guest, good friend Nicholas Volinchak. One more time, Nick, just in case everyone didn't catch it the first time. If people want to find you, where are they going to go looking?
Yeah, check us out at researchfantasy.com. Find us on YouTube at Research Fantasy, Facebook at Research Fantasy, Twitter at Research and Win, or if you just want to talk to me, I'm at Nick from CWE. Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun. Anytime you want me to come back on, I'd be more than happy to.
My pleasure. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming on. And for anyone trying to follow us, go to youtube.com/10inthehead. Subscribe in the top right corner, and you'll get updates for when we're coming out with new episodes. If you don't like YouTube, go to facebook.com/10inthehead. Follow, subscribe. You'll get all the updates. It's magnificent what social media does. If you don't like either of those and you love Twitter, go to Twitter. You can find me personally and the 10 in the Head show at Nick Faber 1229. Again, that's Nick Faber 1229. Feel free to direct message me, email me about any questions or anything. I'll be glad to help. I'm an avid fantasy football nut. So I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you watching. Nicholas, I appreciate you, and everyone have a great day.